everyone. I'm going to talk to you about some tools. None of this is new technology, all of it is very old, but there are tools that I'm using in teaching that I found to be quite useful in two ways. One is to improve the attractiveness of my presentation, and secondly, to get students to learn these tools. Students are supposed to be IT savvy, but I find that most of the time, the energy that has been invested in IT is actually very poor. Their grasp of the tools that are actually really basic is absent, to the point that when they graduate and they leave and they go out and they work somewhere else, not all biologists are going to become biologists. Most of our students will have administrative or managerial roles, and many of these tools could help them, but until they are introduced to them, and being introduced to them is not enough, they have to use it somehow. Okay, so there are two goals. One is to enhance my ability to deliver an interesting lecture, and secondly, increase their grasp of these rather basic tools. Okay, so the role of tools, firstly to engage, enhance the lecture delivery. So a picture paints 1,000 words. You might be talking about something, but an image is available. Nowadays, a video is even available, and it's quite easily obtainable. Secondly, to excite and to explore. So through these additional enhancements, I hope that the student will be interested enough to go and explore resources that are out there. So they are on the computer, and as Ravi said, many of them are on in odd hours of the night. Hopefully, by things that they see in the lecture, they'll be curious enough to investigate some of those material that's out there. And there's so much material that's out there, it's a ploy, sort of you dangle a carrot, and hopefully they follow. They're excited enough to follow it. Third thing is to get them to express it, and this is to get them to use the tools so that they have a grasp of rather powerful basic tools. So the last part is about, actually it's about digital citizenship. There are 9 elements, one of which is digital literacy and digital communication. Okay, and you're going to have a presentation later, hopefully, since it's via video, and Abigail will probably explore those issues further. Okay, so what are these basic tools? In the 90s, there was HTML. It was still divorced from the average user. You had to be a bit geeky in order to use HTML. You know, it's a bit difficult. It's almost like machine code programming. So web page, very few people would have web pages. Biologists almost had none, until it became easier only towards the late 90s. Then you have mailing lists. 1998, this guy came up with something called One List. It eventually got bought over, and you have Yahoo groups now, right? Google groups came on much later. But in 1998, it meant that someone with a little bit of familiarity with the computer could create mailing lists. And so many of the oldest mailing lists in Singapore, they all date from 1998. Blogs became really easy to use in 2003, helped maybe by the Iraqi blogger who was blogging while the US was bombing Iraq. So everyone was like, what is this tool, Blogger? But it was a little bit unfriendly then. But by 2003, Blogger became much more attractive. And you know, it's got to be colorful and easy. It's got to be a 3-step process to sign up with a blog. Then it will encourage the layman to use. There was a student who said, oh, I don't know how to blog. So I stood next to her, and you have 5 minutes to start a blog. And she got her post up in 3 minutes. So this is someone who's not that IT savvy could do it. Okay, because it's a simple process. So that's why we saw an explosion of blogs after 2003. Then now we've moved on to a very interesting phase where you have all these webs that are, all these tools that are platform independent. You're probably familiar with YouTube. So you know that you can access a YouTube page from any computer. You don't have to worry whether the student is using a PC or a Mac or Unix, right? You just give them a URL, anyone can go there. You don't have to install Google Earth onto the computer cluster's computers, right? And then realize, oh, the day before you don't have admin privileges. and start pulling your hair out. Now you just go to Google Maps. Everyone can use the same thing at the same time. There's no confusion that that person is using a different version or that person's computer is unable to run a program. So this is an incredible development, and there's almost something free turning up every other month. So if you're feeling a bit depressed, you don't have to go shopping. Just go to the internet and there's some new goodies for you all the time. In fact, sometimes when I'm conducting a workshop, I'll discover that a new feature has been introduced that I hadn't known about. So this is a web page from 99, a guide to the mangroves. We put the whole thing online. I did it with the help of a friend. It's actually very low resolution. So the exciting thing is now that you go to Sungai Buloh, there's wireless there. So if you have a handphone that can access the net, you can actually pull down pages of the guidebook. They were so low res that they actually download very well. Okay, but this is a lot of work. I did it with the help of someone called Ria Tan. Then blog. Blogging made it easy to push up news quickly. So this is interesting. This is a vulture that lost his way and ended up in Singapore. So this was in Changi, and you can see this is a guy, he's an NS man, and he's about the same size as a vulture. So the image very powerful, and the guy takes the photo, sends it to me, and I can put it up very quickly. So blogging allowed us to share information very quickly and relatively easily. This was 2004 tsunami. So I'm a mangrove researcher. I go to many of these places that I knew would be covered by the tidal wave, and we knew that there would be a lot of damage, a lot of help would be needed. So it started getting organized very quickly. And this was painful because this was manually, a page was manually created, and there were all kinds of donations that were requested. Medical supply, cash, clothing, and different organizations were handling different things. And this had to be updated all the time. It was possible because my friends were out there in all these various places, calling back and reporting what changes were required. And so this was being updated manually, and when we sorted it, we had to go through one by one to sort. This was before all these Web 2.0 applications became available. So it's really tough, required a lot of work. Now you could do this in minutes, what took hours. So this is Sungai Buloh. We had a walk for the 15th anniversary, and it's so painless. You just put out a web page, a link to a registration form. So Google Forms allows you to create this. Even if you're unfamiliar with IT stuff, it's a step-by-step process. You just write the question, indicate what kind of responses you want. So you see we collected name, email addresses, handphone numbers, which date they wanted to come, etc. Right? Then that information is immediately dumped into a Excel sheet online. So if you send out the advertisement, and if you can sit in front of your computer, you can see people signing up. It's live, So it's quite funny. Once I was in the canteen, and I sent an SMS telling my friends, hey, this symposium is, we just got it organized. And I sent them the URL. And when I went back, my computer was on to the page, and it was filling up. And it was all my friends' names, So it gets dumped into a data sheet online, which you don't have to monitor. And because it's just like Excel, you can create a form that taps the names. So it leaves out the handphone number, email address, all these things for privacy issues. Just the names. And you can publish it as a web page. So this was published as a web page. And I didn't have to edit this after I created it. As people signed up and it went into the database, their names only started appearing here. And the total number, this is just a sum of all these cells, because they have to indicate how many people are coming to them. So it's done all automatically. And we even tell them the URL, so they go and see and say, oh, my friend is coming. Right? Then when it reaches the maximum 100, I go in and check once in a while. I just close the registration. Then I copy all their emails, which is within one column, send one email and say, thanks for signing up. And this is where you meet. So I'm one person in the middle of marking exam papers. I was able to organize 2 events that saw more than 300 people register. So this was painless, and as a bonus, because Google Forms even does some summary for you. So they tell you, I asked them, how do you get to know about this event? We advertise through various avenues, and you can see there's quite a number of IVLE students, and this is the word of mouth. So Ravi is talking about word of mouth. You can see word of mouth is 45% of the responses, because it was easy to just go to the web page and sign up, and registration was done in just about 4 days. So how does this help in teaching, enhancing delivery? So I told you this is not new technology in IT terms, because this is a few years ago, so 3 years in IT is a long time. So these are old tools, and I'll first talk about Delicious, which is a way of bookmarking web pages. So you saw at the beginning of the presentation there was a Delicious bookmark, which I'll show you right at the end, that has all of today's links. So if you're wondering what's this Delicious, trying to copy down a link, don't worry, just copy that last link that I have. It has all of the sites that I mentioned today. Okay, so what is Delicious? Okay, this is if you go to Delicious, it gets you to insert this bookmarklets into your favorite browser, and when you encounter a web page or a video, anything on the net that you want to bookmark, you simply click Post to Delicious. Okay, so this is the Batang Kali massacre that happened in Malaysia during the communist insurgency. So I wrote a post, and when I add it to Delicious, this window appears. Right, so it will save the blog URL, and it will save the title that the blog provided. You can edit that if you want. Some blogs don't provide a proper title. And then you can add notes. Okay. Now, very importantly, this is where you're going back to, 18th century technology. You must add a keyword. So I added the word Batang Kali, and you can see 15. There were already 15 bookmarks with the word. Okay. The end result is, under Batang Kali, you have most of the resources that are available, critical resources that are available on the internet that deal with this massacre. So I've already filtered it out for sites that of dubious credibility, or some sites are just simply copying from other sites. So I tossed it out. I try to go to primary sources. Okay, and you can add comments. Okay, where required, and you can edit this so that it makes sense. So this is Delicious. It's bookmarked, and this becomes a resource. And notice the URL is very easy. It's always delicious.com / your name, the user ID that you provide, and in this case it's Batang Kali. So today's bookmarks, there was bookmarking just now actually at the back of the classroom, is delicious.com / Sivasothi / buzz@2009. Okay, so you see I've actually, besides Batang Kali, I've added a second tag, and that tag for me is books to read. So in the process of finding the material, I now realize, wait, I haven't read this and I haven't read this, so I want to get it. They're both available in National Library. So a friend was going to Bukit Merah Library, so she called me and she said, you wanted to borrow some books, right? I can get them for you. So I told her delicious.com / Sivasothi, books to read. And she's borrowed the book for me and is going to pass it to me later. So these bookmarks can be accessed by anybody. You can access this anywhere. So it's independent of the terminal you're in. So if my Macintosh breaks down and I have to use the PC, I can just go and call out the page. Okay, this is for one of my courses, LSM 3261. And you can see all these bookmarks here. So this is the module name, so the students know where to find it. But supposing they just want to go to the part about bats or echolocation, then they just need to click on this. Okay, so there's all these subcategories within the 44 tags for this section. Now another thing, you'll notice that there's a lock. Okay, the lock is sites that I don't want them to see. So these sites were added in November 2008. They're probably already studying for the exam, so I don't want to frighten them by adding additional resources. So the only two I let go was 2 YouTube videos, which were quite entertaining, and then the rest of it I just kept locked because I'm only going to use it next year. And the minority, the 5% who will scrutinize every bookmark that you cite, might decide they have to go and read this, and it'll create a burden on them. Not most, are just about 5%. So you can lock it so they can't see it. You can see it now because this is my account. But Delicious is not just a personal bookmarking system. This is where the social web is involved. So I bookmark using these keywords, right? So I use echolocation. And Delicious will prompt you, do you want to see all echolocation bookmarks in popular, recent, or your network? So let's look at popular bookmarks. What all Delicious users, the tens of thousands of them, what are many of them listing under echolocation? So you see, this list doesn't include anything that I bookmark, because that's just me, one person bookmarking it. This is bookmarked by 125 people. This was bookmarked by 57. The boy who sees with sound. Echolocation is what bats do. If you ever played tennis at night, you might see a bat. Tennis ball goes really high, a bat comes close and then veers off. That bat is screaming at the top of his voice. Luckily for us, we can't hear the frequency. The echoes bounce off the tennis ball or an insect, and the bat can differentiate between prey item. If it's an insect, it changes the echo, you can zoom in and then catch it on its wing and then eat it happily. So you have a lot of bats in campus, and they're all echolocating, they're all screaming their heads off, right? But it's very interesting to the students that human beings can echolocate too. Not all of us, because we are so dependent on our sight, all the other senses become reduced. But someone who's blind might discover, if they are blind early in life, they actually are able to differentiate of echoes of returning objects. So because of Delicious, I found these stories about Ben Underwood, right? He lost his eyes to cancer at age 2. The mother realized when they're driving in a car that he was saying, hey, are there tall buildings nearby? The mother says, how do you know? And then comes the discovery that it's echolocating. So a reporter goes to his house, they throwing cushions at each other, and Ben can hit the reporter smack in the middle of his chest and loses to him in table soccer, and sees him navigating around the house without holding on to railings. So it turns out that this was very well covered in 2006, and there's even a YouTube video. So in the echolocation component, where I talk about bats and whales, I also added this part, which is human echolocation, and there was a video on YouTube, so a 3-minute video, which I showed. And that, of course, excited the students very much. Allowed them to relate to the subject matter more effectively. Okay, Flickr. So Flickr is to images what Delicious is to bookmarks. Okay, and many people use Flickr simply to upload images. But it's more than that. There are many image repositories on the web. Photographers use the web heavily. In Singapore, there's something called Club Snap. They will share some of their best photos. Some of that alert me when they have good images for me to use in class. But at the fundamental level, you're uploading a bunch of images in an album, and it allows you to do a few things. So this is a set of photos from the recce that I put up with my students, and importantly, they are tags. Right, so Mandai Mangrove. So if I'm looking for mangrove tags all over the world, if I click on this, I can find photos labeled with this tag. In fact, one day, Kenneth Pinto from CIT, I asked him to take a bunch of photos at a little rest stop in Pulau Ubin, because in that one spot there are about 12 species of mangrove plants around us, which we thought was a very nice talking point. So he took the photographs, he uploaded it to his Flickr account. I added all the scientific names in the comments, And a friend of ours in NIE, who's a mangrove researcher, he has a watch list. So when the plant names appeared in his watch list, he went to look at our photos. And he was able to tell us, hey Siva, the plant that you call Cereops tagal is actually a new species. It's something that we've never seen before. We learnt of it 1 or 2 years ago. So he provided the correction in our comments. Right? So that's how it's no longer a static web page where you put information, and if the guy wants to contact you, he looks for your about page, and then if he has the energy, he'll write to you. Here it was immediate. He wrote the comment appeared in my inbox, and then I told Kenneth, and we were quite happy. Okay, so this is importance of tags. But Flickr is smarter than just depending on tags. It can even search your file names and any comments that you might provide. Now this is another thing, it also provides all sizes. So you don't have to be restricted to this small image. If you want, you click on all sizes and you can pick out a large photo. So if you want it as a desktop image, or you want to look at a particular detail, you need it blown up, if I've released the high res, it will be there. So this was something about camouflage in flounders, these flatfish. And I was able to enhance the lecture by providing many nice photos from people who had put up the images. And you know, the students really like colorful things, which is kind of depressing because you've got this nice delivery worked up, you know, which you've really researched, but nothing beats a colorful photo, so we just learn to live with it. Like you're on Kentridge and you're talking about the plants and really got something interesting, then a squirrel bounces across the road and you know you've lost your audience. So bring it into the classroom, and amongst the many photos you pick out the best that can explain your point. And you can see all of this were from Flickr. And this was really great because we're trying to say, oh, camouflage, they can camouflage so well, but a predator, you know, this aerial predator can still spot the flounder. So you ask the students, how did it do it? We always like to ask questions, especially in this module, because we're trying to get them to think, which they usually resist doing. Now, use of photos, everyone's got questions about it. So one really lovely thing about Flickr is it allows you to decide how you want to share your photo. So this little thing, some rights reserved, so let's look at, it's a license. So this individual says you can use it, but you got to indicate it's his photo. You can't be engaged in a commercial activity, so in education you're safe. And you cannot alter the work, so use as is. Okay, there's a lot of variants of these licenses, and at 12 o'clock, you're fortunate you have Jojo's talking to you about Creative Commons. Singapore license is now available for use. Okay, this has been around for a long time. And of course the important thing is not just using their image. This is just to tell you that I found this through the word flounder in the title and flounder in the comments by the user who put it. But important thing of using people's material that they've made available is give them encouragement. So I always go in and write a comment. Sometimes if I have energy, I'll tell them I'm using it in class in Singapore and all that. So some guy in South America or Europe or the US is really tickled by the fact that 100 students in Singapore in a lecture are going to see their photo with their name up there. And that encourages them to produce even more content. So it's actually really low cost. The energy of you commenting is going to get them generate more content. It's really funny. There's people who put out whale sounds, and I wrote to them, and they say, all right, we're going to put even more whale sounds up. So this is the currency. Encouragement. And this is very critical because very few people comment. I think if you're in teaching or education or volunteering, you find that nobody will say thank you. Like 300 people will sign up for the event. One person email and say, hey, thanks for the ride, it was really good. Right? So that encouragement is very important. Now, how to search? So you've got all these so-called modern tools, but you find like a throwback to fundamental skills, learning how to use the right keywords, right combination of keywords. Similarly, how to search. So I had a photo of my cat in the sink. When it got really hot, he likes to cool off, right? So I put it on Flickr, I tagged it, cats in sink. Then I was wondering, wow, first of all I was surprised that there are even 9 photos of cats in sink up there. Okay, so it's like, this is the power of the masses. People are going to be tagging with all kinds of words. Don't think you're that unique, someone else is having a similar idea. So the thing to do is tag and put it up and then discover. But I thought 9, so I was scratching my head. Then I realized that's only 1 cat in the sink. So technically it's not cats in sink, right? Because my photo is just cat in sink. So I switched to cat in sink. That's where I discover all the photos were. Okay? And yeah, this is one of the nicest. So the same principle, tagging, searching, applicable in YouTube, Google video as well, right? And so I was able to show them a video instead of just a picture of this octopus that assumes different forms under different conditions. So here it looks almost like the flounder and changes its pigmentation and disappears. Okay, enhancing expression. So this is where we get the students to try and do work. So in blogging, what I did is first I used the module blocks, and I found it's a great way to archive interesting stories. So, we don't let students go with slippers to Changi Beach during the field trip there. And when someone stepped on a scorpion fish, we could explain why. Right? Put up a link to the newspaper article and blog it. This was cat sterilization. It was actually done by AVA. So in the animal behavior class, we debate how sensible, or rather how stupid it is to ban cats in HDB. Okay? And this survey supports some of that. And you can change the template. So I wanted it to look really like an NUS source, but you can change the template and have a bit of fun. And you can talk about current things. So this was after we had done tropical storms, and around that time when we teach tropical storms is the tropical storm season. So it's a lot of the news. But students seem to have not read the news or the newspaper or the TV. So when there are fires all over Greece, they've not heard of fires, not heard of Greece sometimes. So the blog is a way to communicate the reality of life back into the lecture hall. And there was this issue, push or pull. Are they really reading the blog? Some of them will say, oh, okay, I'll cram for it during the reading week, which kind of defeats the purpose. Right? It's that lecture, maybe there are 3 posts. But end of the course, there might be 20, 30 posts. So send them an email. In the end, I use both. I put out a blog post, send them an email, a lot of them end up reading. This is research students encouraged to put their field journals online. So she did a really good job, and we could monitor her progress. And this is another project. The collaborator is actually overseas in North Carolina, so he was reading the blog to get updates. Instead of writing to the student and say, what's happening? Oh, this is a minor digression. This is MSN. I found out that if you tell students you're available, nobody will come. So I gave them one night of MSN, and from 8 p.m. to, I think, 3 a.m. The peak of activity is from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. And it's wonderful because when they ask long question, you just say yes. I was wondering what's the benefit of what? Blah, blah, blah. Phrase the question. Okay, so then they end up learning how to write. What's the mutual benefit of these 2 insects having different metamorphoses? Okay, what do you have in your notes? So in the end, they end up providing most of the answers. We got them to blog. Kenneth and I set this up. And blogging was to get them to understand that you need an interesting title. If you use photos, you should cite the source. This student didn't. So they get corrected. They understand that. Don't write too much text, 1 or 2 paragraphs. Their readers also have a short attention span. Link to other sites. cite your reference. Now this is done automatically by the module block. Their full name appears, right? And you can see what time they posted. And they must have the tag, the right tag. If they don't have the group 34 tag, their TA will not read it. The TA just goes to group 34 posts. So the TA read it and provided a comment. So teaching them to be precise is actually very helpful. This was in ecology. We were sharing data. So we'd go to Cambridge and do a simple field trip. And Gmail actually is a lot more. There are documents. So when they post up the data, the TA can correct them and say, what is the unit? You see, they don't put units, so they get corrected for that. And when their fellow students can't understand, they can comment in the same page. This is the TA's notes, so she helpfully highlighted it in yellow. The students have to post their images on Flickr. They use Google Maps. And they need to label clearly. Because they don't label clearly, they are doing comparison between two plots. The people who complain are the students themselves. So it's no longer us nagging them, but they nagging each other, so that they can do the analysis properly. And in the end, they log all the sites where their raw data is, site location on Google Maps, where the photos are and where the... So this is another student, a research student. This is a field log. So when MParks wants the data, we just give them the link. And this is me complaining about how much marking I had to do. So every time I completed, the number would go down until finally it reached 0. So this was to get the students thought it was very amusing, and it got them to think about using Google Forms. And this is document sharing, also within Google Docs. So the proposal is written, and if there are two or three supervisors, they can all chip in. Okay, so when they graduate, they need some basic skills, life skills. Nowadays, IT can help them so much, and don't think that they know a lot more than you. You'll be surprised. So try using these tools, and beyond the fact that they need to get work done effectively, this generation is very critical for them to get involved in the country. So they have to become active citizens. There are a lot of avenues for communicating. But when they graduate without the skills to communicate, they are unable to chip in into the idea called Singapore. So our NUS graduates, we hope, are going to be more than just people who are going to push a bit of paper around. We want them to get engaged. And surprisingly, these are very useful tools to help them get started. Thank you, everyone.